The Anglophone crisis provokes a significant rise in the prices of basic commodities on markets across the Republic of Cameroon. It is, of course, one of the devastating consequences of the deepening socio-political and security crisis rocking the northwest and the southwest regions of the country. Out of Cameroon, the United Nations, the African Union, and the Economic Community of West African States urged Nigerians to stay calm as the Independent Electoral Commission of the Federal Republic of Nigeria prepares to announce the results, the official results of the presidential elections in that country. Those were top stories. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinox Television, live from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. I am Bable Jonathan. The impact of the deepening socio-political and security crisis rocking the northwest and the southwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon for close to 3 years today is now being felt in households in other parts of the country. Prices of basic commodities have continued rising significantly as a result of scarcity, or better still, low supply provoked by the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. Our reporter Immaculate Fogwe was in the Sandaga market, one of the biggest markets here in the economic capital as far as basic consumer goods are concerned, and she brought back this report.
The cost of most foodstuffs coming in from the conflict-hit northwest and southwest regions of the country has significantly increased. Here in Marché Sadnaga, found in Douala in the littoral region, a bucket of cocoyams, which cost 3,500 francs before, is now sold at 6,000 francs. The prices of tomatoes has equally seen an increase from 4,500 francs to 6,000 francs. The vendors attribute the increase of prices to the crisis that has provoked a significant drop in supply, thus the increase in prices.
We have lack of the goods in the market, so it makes now the price to go high. We sell them now. At times farmers come, the few farmers that are able to reach here, they come, they give us high prices. Like the packet of this celery, at first you can buy it for 1,500, but today it's 3,500, 4,000.
Most of the gardeners are fled into bushes, so these spices now are coming lesser, and the price is so dear. So it affects us so much.
They are calling on the government authorities to come up with lasting solutions that can bring a halt to the ongoing Anglophone crisis.
They should go for dialogue, try to end this problem, this Anglophone crisis.
What we need the government to do is dialogue, to go and meet his people, talk with his people, so that this crisis should end.
This is a situation now, but there are fears that if it continues, the prices will skyrocket.
Immaculate Fogwe reporting there. Coming up, we take a look at the consequences of the Anglophone crisis on women, notably because of the crisis. Several women in the two Anglophone regions of the Republic of Cameroon, the northwest and the southwest regions, are today suffering simply because of the deadly and the devastating consequences. It should be recalled that in the northwest region of the country, women are now digging graves and burying corpses, most often in mass graves, and this is because men have simply fled their communities, and many women have been suffering other challenges as a result of the Anglophone crisis. And the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa, notably founded and led by Agbo Bala Felix, a human rights lawyer, is assisting some women in finding solutions to the plight of women amid the deepening crisis. Derek Jato reports on Boya.
Amid depression, poverty, killings and threat, The Gender Department of the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa is sitting for a planification meeting at Itboya headquarters ahead of the 2019 Women's Day celebration. To this center, the 2019 Women's Day in Cameroon should have the Anglophone crisis at the center. That is, by reflecting on how to rescue women of the Northwest and Southwest regions from the unbearable pains they have been going through for 3 years now.
We are remembering those in the bushes who cannot come out to celebrate this International Women's Day. We want to encourage you. As we go out to commemorate this day, let's think about the women in the bushes. Let's think of how to help them.
We call on these stakeholders to meditate seriously on ways of getting solutions, on ways of helping these women.
These members also advance reasons why they are stressing on this point.
It has been a situation where we went to visit IDPs, and on that particular day there was a lady who was on level. She was due for delivery, and she has never been to the hospital. She has never taken any received any medical attention.
Barrister Agbobala Felix, founder of this Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa, said he authorized the activity because of its logical relevance to the matter at hand.
Women's Day is a very important day that is celebrated, but the peculiarity or the specificity of this one is that a lot of our women, our mothers, are currently living in the bushes. They have been internally displaced. Some of them are living in Nigeria.
And as the countdown narrows, the Gender Department of this Human Rights Center stand for the 2019 Women's Day reflection in Cameroon, not 2019 Women's Day celebration, because to them, the women to celebrate are in the bushes.
That is the situation as far as women are concerned in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. Cameroon's Minister of Public Health, Manauda Malachi, has urged officials of public hospitals in the city of Douala to step up efforts in view of improving on healthcare services in the different health amenities in the country's economic capital in order to avoid the embarrassing experience he had during his visit to some hospitals here in the economic capital, Douala, yesterday. Before we come to that, we're going to talk about decentralization, which is one of the issues that government has been talking about, notably with regards to instructions from the head of state, Paul Biya, to accelerate the decentralization process as the way out of the ongoing Anglophone crisis. And within this context, the government has decided to increase the decentralization budget from a little above 10 billion francs CFA to close to 50 billion francs CFA. But this is not satisfactory to some local council authorities who think that there are still some lapses that will hinder the effective implementation of decentralization on the ground, despite the increment. And of course, we have details in this report compiled by For-Me Armstrong Sander.
Moving Cameroon's decentralization budget from 10 billion francs CFA in 2018 to 49.8 billion francs CFA in 2019 may have been perceived as groundbreaking in a stagnating decentralization process by ordinary Cameroonians, but not so with mayors who are pressed with the ever-increasing local development challenges across Cameroon. Job Theophile Kwamnang, mayor of the Douala 3 subdivision, highlights that 7 billion francs CFA of the total amount will be allocated to activities, functioning and remunerations of members of regional councils across Cameroon.
Ça n'arrive pas dans les mairies, et quand ça arrive très tardivement.
He thinks that the 1 million francs CFA allocated to each of the 360 municipal councils in Cameroon is far from being enough, considering their challenges.
Le comparer peut-être à la mairie, je sais pas moi, de Mouyouka ou bien je sais pas de Chico, ce n'est pas possible. On n'a pas les mêmes problèmes.
Speaking from Kambe, the mayor of the Kambe Council, Pongabe, who saluted the increase in the 2019 decentralization budget, used an analogy of his Cambe Council to demonstrate how 100 million francs CFA can be very insufficient for development in a larger council area.
The Cambe Council is 2 kilometers out of town, and with this insecurity, we are deciding to include with a very high fence. That will take 65 million. Then the road from Nkambe to Lasin, passing through the breadbasket of this area, takes 25 million. I mean, what else is left?
Mayor Pongabe also thinks that money to local councils should be relatively distributed and backed by technical resources.
They should not just throw the money. It should be accompanied by real civil engineers to supervise. No tar road passing through Nkambe. And yet a council that has a tar road passing through the whole council has the same amount of money, 27, for road maintenance. How is that equitable?
Some councils like Ubala in the central region of Cameroon, perhaps because of their sizes, have projects that fit just so well with the amount made available by the government of Cameroon in 2019. As the mayor of Ubala, Pierre Simone Diba, explains, Jean-Robert Wafo, who is deputy mayor of the Douala 2 Council, described the more than 49 billion francs CFA increase in the 2019 decentralization budget as a non-event vis-à-vis the expectation of the local population. Unlike Mayor Jean-Robert Wafo of Douala 2 Council, Job Theophile Kwamnang of Douala Council, Mayor Pongabe Kambe and Simon Pierre Ediba of Obala say the increased amount is a good step, but more needs to be done in order to bring Cameroon to the levels of South Africa, Senegal and Tanzania in East Africa.
And I told you earlier, Public Health Minister Manauda Malachi has instructed officials of hospitals in the city of Douala to step up efforts in view of avoiding the embarrassing experience he had yesterday during his unannounced visit to some health amenities in the city of Douala, notably in the Lakentini Hospital, where he met the father of a patient seriously complaining over what he qualified as poor treatment given to him by some personnel of that health amenity. He equally highlighted or noted some lapses in the functioning of hospitals, other hospitals in the city of Douala, and he called for efforts to be made in order to improve healthcare services in the city of Douala and, of course, across the country. We have details in this report.
The father of a patient in the Douala Lakentini Hospital speaks out his anger, frustration and disappointment over what he qualifies as poor treatment by some personnel of the health amenity. He tells Public Health Minister Manauda Malachi because he did not have money, he was cast out like an object. The security guard instructed to forcefully take him outside. He is later comforted by the minister on an unannounced visit and the Director General of the Lakentini Hospital, who provided quick solutions to his problem. After visiting other departments of the hospital, Minister Manauda Malachi continued to the Douala General Hospital, where he ordered the destruction of this makeshift restaurant at the entrance of the hospital. Here and elsewhere, notably at the Cité de Palmiers, Nilong and Bonasama district hospitals, the minister instructed the officials of the different health amenities to enhance quality healthcare services. Some few things have changed, but there is still a lot to be done. Minister Manauda Malachi continues scrutinizing healthcare services across the country.
And illegal and uncontrolled activities of some companies involving forest exploitation or better still exploitation of forest resources remains a serious threat to the resources, individuals and the rights of communities in Cameroon, other African nations and across the world, and this has often been at the origin of deforestation that is a threat to the ecosystem and the health of human beings as well as animals across the world. And it is for this reason that some experts and stakeholders are meeting here in the economic capital to discuss the accountability framework, which is coming up as a tool to solve this problem. Details in this report. Forest resources in Cameroon, Africa and the world at large are increasingly being threatened by illegal and uncontrolled human activities resulting to deforestation with devastating consequences on the ecosystem and the rights of individuals and communities.
Deforestation is a massive problem contributing to climate change. Emissions from deforestation are a major driver of greenhouse gases, contributing to global warming. It also has impacts on biodiversity and also on all of the people and communities who depend on forests. So it's one of the biggest global problems that we face.
Experts attribute the non-respect of human and community rights and environmental norms by companies to the absence of adequate control mechanisms.
All over the world, there's a big push for companies to become more publicly accountable for the impacts, environmental impacts, especially deforestation, and impacts on human rights and community rights. However, there is no system that says what is a good commitment, what is a bad commitment, how do we know whether they're actually doing the things that they say that they're doing.
Thus, the Accountability Framework Initiative, AFI, involving more than 200 companies, non-governmental organizations like the Worldwide Fund for Nature, governments and other stakeholders. Some of them converged on Douala Tuesday to discuss the AFI.
So the accountability framework hopes to set a series of principles that say to companies that if they have a commitment to respect human rights, this is what they need to do in order to really implement that commitment and to show that they are carrying that commitment out.
The ultimate target of the AFI is full implementation of forest exploitation commitments and policies in a bid to guarantee a sustainable exploitation, development, and the well-being and growth of communities and inhabitants. Out of Cameroon, the United Nations Organization, the African Union, and the Economic Community of West African States have urged Nigerians and political parties to remain calm as the Independent National Electoral Commission prepares to proclaim the results of the general elections, notably the presidential election of February 23, 2019. And this call is coming at a time when the All Progressive Congress of incumbents President Muhammadu Buhari is claiming victory, while the People's Democratic Party of Atiku Abubakar is rejecting the figures presented by the Electoral Commission. Details in this report compiled by Innocent Aze.
Results of the February 23, 2019 presidential election in Nigeria is expected anytime henceforth. Reports have been spreading that incumbent President Muhammadu Buhari of the All Progressives Congress has won majority of the votes that will give him a landslide victory over his closest challenger, Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, who lost in Kano and Lagos states, which carry most of the votes. Atiku's party has rejected the figures that was presented by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, during vote counting, terming them incorrect and unacceptable. This has attracted the attention of the United Nations, African Union, and the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. They have urged all Nigerians and political parties to exercise restraint as INEC announces results of the presidential and the National Assembly elections. A Nigerian news agency reports that in a statement by the international bodies made available Tuesday by ECOWAS Commission, they urged candidates and all Nigerians to continue exercising patience and calm for the complete results. Still in the statement, they encourage aggrieved parties and persons to resort to legal means to seek redress in accordance with the Constitution and relevant laws as agreed in the Peace Accord of February 13. Meantime, in Senegal, the Prime Minister has announced that President Macky Sall has won Sunday's presidential election as the country's election commission warned the candidates not to release their own tallies following the vote. The Prime Minister, citing a provincial tally, said Macky Sall won at least 57% of the vote cast in Sunday's poll. Following the declaration of victory, the country's election commission, Senat, called on candidates and civil society groups to abstain from prematurely declaring the results and maintain the calm atmosphere since the election was conducted. More than 6.5 million people registered to take part in the vote. The Electoral Commission has not made any announcement. Official results are expected no later than Friday. It should be noted, a candidate must win more than 50% of votes to avoid a runoff. If no candidate has won the required votes, the two candidates with the most votes go to a second round to be held on March 24. Meantime, opposition candidates said there was no winner in Sunday's poll.
And in Senegal, with just days to go before vote counting ends, the country's prime minister suggested that President Macky Sall could be heading for a second term in office, and this is disputed by two other candidates and many of Senegal's youths who say the electoral process should be fair. And in sports, the country's senior women's team will be flying to China to continue with their preparation ahead of the 2019 World Cup competition in France. And the information was made public by the president of the Cameroon Football Federation during a visit to the camping site of the Lions, accompanied by, of course, the country's Minister of Sports and Physical Education, Professor Narcisse Mwelekambi. Manjikan Gebre has more.
After several weeks of camping at the CAF Excellence Center in Bankomo with locally selected players, Alain Jumfa, head coach of the female national football team, says the need for the professionals to join the locals and for them to travel out to continue training is very imperative. The request of Alain Jumfa came as Sports and Physical Education Minister Professor Narcisse Mwelekambi made a courtesy visit to the den of the Lionesses who are preparing for the 2019 FIFA World Cup to be hosted by France. According to the Sports and Physical Education boss, Professor Narcisse Mwelekambi, his visit was to see how the team is preparing, but reminded the girls how much the country is counting on them.
La nation compte sur elle. Et combien il est important qu'elle mette en valeur des principes de combativité.
Responding to the worries of the coach, the president of the Cameroon Football Federation, FECAFOOT, Seydou Bombon-Joya, reassures that in the days ahead, the female national football team will be traveling to China, where they are expected to continue their preparation. Meanwhile, the Minister of Sports and Physical Education announced that all measures have been taken for a better preparation of the team ahead of their participation at the 2019 FIFA Women's World Cup that will be hosted by France.
FECAFOOT President Seydou Bombon-Joya was accompanying Sports and Physical Education Minister Professor Narcisse Mwelekambi to go and encourage the Lionesses before their departure for China. Coming up next is Talking Point. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us in Talking Points. And we are receiving Jurel Harrison Zene. He is the policy coordinator of the Worldwide Fund for Nature, WWF. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Jonathan.
What is the situation of forest exploitation today in Cameroon and on the African continent at large?
I would say, if we look at the situation of the forest cover in Cameroon today, we'll say we are not yet at that alarming rate where we have to start getting scared. But at the same time, when we look at the different operations that are going on, the different, especially as we're aiming towards emergence by 2035, then we start looking at what are the safeguards we're putting in place to ensure that Cameroon does not become a major deforestation site, especially looking at the role that forest plays in the ecosystem, especially in terms of forest carbon stock, which contributes to climate change. And if we look at the different engagements or commitments that the government of Cameroon has made in the last few years, especially after the following the Paris Agreement in 2015, where the head of state, His Excellency President Pobia, personally took part, then we start asking ourselves, what are we doing, especially as stakeholders, to ensure that our forests, especially its biodiversity that it hosts, are preserved for future generations.
Now, talking about exploitation and the companies that are exploiting the forest products, we've had a number of cases of protests coming from communities where the forest resources are being exploited, notably in parts of the East region, for example, as a result of the violation of rules of the game, as a result of violation of the rights of the communities. What's the situation as far as that is concerned?
I would say we are still trying to, or we are looking at some of those issues, but more importantly, I wouldn't want to talk about the forest exploitation itself, especially logging, because I have that is something we're working on, and we have a different program that is covering that. But what we're more interested in, especially within my program, within the program in WWF, looking at the engagement of private sector in ensuring that their supply chains are deforestation free, human rights, respect human rights. We're looking at different supply chains, be it the palm oil sector, be it cocoa. These are commodities which normally do well in forested areas, especially in the tropics. But at the same time, we think that there's an opportunity to ensure that these supply chains are produced in such a way that we can minimize deforestation in a sustainable manner, to minimize deforestation, to respect community rights, to ensure that everybody is looking at things from the same perspective. And we think that WWF has been working in the last years to accompany the government, but also the other actors, especially companies, to see how we put in place
some mechanisms
that will help these companies to abide by the commitments made at global levels.
And that is why today, and you and other experts and stakeholders were meeting here in Douala to discuss what you have called the Accountability Framework Initiative. What's it all about, the Accountability Framework Initiative?
Yes, the Accountability Framework Initiative, it's an initiative that has been put in place by a number of partners, NGOs, including WWF, which is a member of the steering committee, which tries to see how to bring together within a common platform the different commitments that companies make. Be it in terms of the different certification schemes they might have abided to or adhered to. And so we're looking at how do you ensure that the companies in their supply chains could demonstrate that the production or their products that goes to the market has respected certain principles. And the Accountability Framework Initiative is just that platform that enables these companies on a single, I would say, with a single framework to see how much am I respecting my commitments on deforestation, how am I respecting my commitments on respect of human rights and community rights, how am I reporting on those commitments to the different schemes I've adhered to?
No, we know that some of those companies not respecting some of the commitments and not respecting some of the rules, some of the rights of the people and the communities deliberately. So when you come up with such a framework, how is it going to help to improve? Is it some kind of sensitization?
I think you're right that sometimes they don't do that, not because they really love to, but also remember, and I think if you were there today, you'll see that Cameroon today, just like many other countries in the world and companies, are now being obliged by the market. So the market is one of those one of those mechanisms or one of those instruments that are pushing both companies and even governments to see how to take on board some of these initiatives, be it deforestation free, that means producing while minimizing, increasing your yields while minimizing your footprint, your environmental footprint or your ecological footprint. These companies, in most cases, you see like what we had today without any publicity, companies like Sik Cacao, Barry Calabot, Cargill, have all taken those commitments because their markets are putting pressure on them to ensure that what you sell to us is respects certain, at least certain minimum, what we call the core principles or certain minimum commitments that ensure
the corporate responsibility of enterprises.
Yeah, there we are looking at how you set all these core principles within the accountability framework in your corporate social responsibility. That's why we have companies that have like deforestation-free policy, respect for community rights, and they themselves try to put in place mechanisms to ensure that along their value chains, those stakeholders along their value chains, be they smallholders, try to ensure that these rights are respected, these commitments are fulfilled.
Now, that is from a global perspective, looking at the deforestation issues and so on. Now, to go, what will the local people benefit from this?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question, and I'll say it's critical to see how we bring all this to the grassroots level. I believe that a company that has taken global commitments and is sourcing from communities would just want to translate into concrete action some of those commitments. Be it commitments on accompanying smallholders to respect those commitments at the global level. So translating that into concrete actions. That's why we have companies today like I said, no, without publicity, Cargill and others, accompany small cocoa farmers in producing sustainably using best practices, either providing them in terms of capacity building, in terms of drying, so that Cameroon's cocoa that goes to the world market becomes, I'll say, a cocoa of competitive. You see, at one time Cameroon's cocoa was considered one of the most in terms of quality, and because of the liberalization of the market, some of those practices, those things that we used to enjoy being Cameroonian in terms of when you go abroad, yeah, this is Cameroonian cocoa you're proud of, we might be losing that because today we don't care very much about how we produce. And I think when we see like the National Cocoa and Coffee Board coming on board to support this initiative, then we know that Cameroon is engaged, is committed to ensure that the product, our exports become sustainable.
All right, Zurel Harlison Zene, Policy Coordinator of WWF, thanks for coming.
Thanks, Jonathan, for having me.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today.